Today, our conversation is about congregational care and nurturing at a time of, I heard one pastor over the weekend refer to it as physical distancing, since we're really trying to cultivate a new sense of social community in different ways of gathering. Linda had shared earlier some of the exciting things that Zion United Methodist Church up in Las Vegas was doing during this time of not meeting in person for worship. So Linda, do you mind if I kick us off by asking you to share some of the exciting things that you have been doing?
This past Sunday, we did an initial drive-in church. So we had church in the parking lot. Came in, they stayed in their cars so that they were compliant. And we had a regular church service. And people were happy to see one another, although they could not touch one another, because we want to be obedient to what the government is saying and also what our bishop has said. And so our service was about 45 minutes to an hour. And then we made some determinations by honking our horns to answer some of the questions that were asked. And if those that agreed. And we had a wonderful time.
During this time of physical distancing, what are some of the ways that you are creating community in your church?
Well, we're offering through Facebook Live, we're doing devotionals on Tuesdays and Thursdays with prayer requests that may have come in, so that those are shared just by first name. We have our e-news blast through Constant Contact is going out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with updates, thoughts, notes from our lay leaders, just ways to help people stay connected, and reminders about links to Facebook Live, so even if they don't have Facebook, they can connect. The other thing we already had in place was our congregational care team, so they're upping the ante, if you will, and making some more personal phone calls. I do check-ins with my staff every morning and give them an update, and they can update me so we know we're all staying healthy. I've reached out to all the leaders of different groups within the church and asked them to personally call the folks who are part of their small group or their ministry. For instance, the head usher is calling all of her ushers and greeters to check in with them. She has asked for weekly scripture that she can share with them, so she's touching base. And then she has also offered to go and do pharmacy runs or take out food runs for some of our older folks who can't get out. We're trying to make sure that those who are part of like UMW circles are taking care of one another. And so my responsibility then, I see it, is to take care of my leaders and ask them to take care of everyone else and then respond back to me if there's a need.
Great sharing, Jen. Any questions for Jennifer, or what else are you all doing to create community in this time?
I'm working on a letter, an old-fashioned snail mail letter. My congregation, a lot of them they're not comfortable with technology, but right now it's the only way we can stay in contact. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but they're just going to have to get comfortable or face the pain of being isolated, and I don't want that for them. So I'm going to send out a letter because I've sent all this stuff out on email and had it all out on social media about how to, watch our online service and how to stay connected. But I know that they probably aren't aware of that. So I'm going to send them a letter in the mail. They can show it to their kids or their grandkids and say, help me do this. I'm also going to include a couple of self-addressed envelopes. So if they want to send their offering in, if they can't we've got online giving, but if they can't manage that. I'm going to send them some self-addressed envelopes so they can send offering in, and all the other things like that Jen mentioned with emails and devotionals, etc. I'm doing those also.
My congregation is very similar. I was technically on vacation last week, so I kept up to speed and finally starting to take some action this week. I did write a letter to the congregation, letting them know what our church's response is to that. And we have a call team that is going to be touching base with people. We have also have a couple volunteers who are willing to be Christ couriers. I took that from a webinar I was in last week. So our Christ couriers are willing to pick up prescriptions or get groceries for people, things like that. I will be doing a mailing every week with a message, sort of a paper pulpit, if you will. That's came up with that term this morning. So I'll be doing that. And I will be encouraging people to get on email. Only about 50% of our congregation uses email. So in order to not leave anyone out, I have been doing everything by mail, or we may be doing some things by courier, keeping the CDC's practices in mind. So really just kind of getting up and running with that, and glad to see you all this morning and to hear your ideas and things that you're doing with your congregations. One other thing, I did also explore the Zoom online call-in for the phone. They have a message on their site that the call-in may not be available because of the high demand. They may take that away from the basic service, which is all our church can afford. And then I looked into conferencecall.com, and when I called in, they charge per minute that will be added to your cell phone bill. It's only 1 cent per minute, but I know that's going to be a turnoff for people. So right now we're just sticking to paper and phone calls, and it's my goal to talk to everybody once a week, and in addition to the call team calling people as well.
And Janet, may I ask a question about the freeconferencecall.com?
Yes.
Is it 1 cent per minute for everybody who calls in, or just for the primary person offering the call?
When I called as a participant to see how that worked, I got a message immediately that said that 1 cent would be added to my bill.
Desert in the foothills, they saw a ton of success. He did do a lot of training and preparing his congregation and his church leaders before launching into an online worship service. So I've asked him to share that information. How did he do it? What were the steps? Because there was multiple communications and practice sessions that he did. So the good news is it's possible. And then the other piece is just reminding us that just to be careful to not make assumptions that because people are older, they're not going to be as capable or interested. Somebody had shared about how active their senior community was on Facebook already before we even had to do any of this.
With our Zoom discount, it makes it pretty affordable at $10 a month. You do have to pay a year in advance, so it's $120. But I know most of my churches, as I talk to them, this is pretty doable.
A service that we use and have used for some time, since well before the epidemic, was One Call Tell All, which is, I'm not sure exactly what it costs, but we have used it at a minimum of once a week. And basically it's just a predetermined message that goes out to the entire congregation. And everybody, virtually everybody, has a phone, whether it's a cell phone or a landline or whatever. So it's a good way to get information out, and it's easy to use. You just record the message and it goes. So that's one thing we have been doing. In addition, we have been working with most of our, I'd say we've got one more to do, all of our leadership team, to make sure that they do have Zoom and they have the equipment to do Zoom. And so that is just about there. As far as the rest of the congregation is concerned, we initiated our radio worship service this last weekend, which we had a lot of good comments. And I realize that's not something that's available to a lot of larger communities, but in our case, we were able to get that set up. And also online streaming. So it's, those things are working. We have a prayer team that is dealing with prayer requests. Obviously, we couldn't name the prayer requests on the air, but we do have a prayer team email that goes out and a couple of other phone trees and things of that nature. So it's, we're learning how to do this, I guess is the way to go.
Kimber Govette has been working with small groups of her leaders and members to teach them how to do Zoom. So just taking a few people at a time and then walking them through how to do a Zoom meeting. And she said that just by doing that kind of personal work with people, she's been able to get a large number of people in her church comfortable. And they actually did Zoom worship and sharing of prayers, concerns, that kind of thing. So that one-on-one, yeah, really helped a lot.
Congregational care looks very different during a time when we can't necessarily go visit people in the hospital, or those one-on-one pastoral visits are shifting in nature a bit. I'm curious for all of you, how has this time shifted your practices of congregational care? And what are you doing to intentionally nurture people during this time?
Beth, this is Jen Lambert. I'll offer up something. I think the initial response was, how can we remind people that we care and how can we stay connected? So with this intentional schedule that we have set up, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, e-news or an email blast, and Tuesday, Thursday devotions that are recorded on Facebook Live. And then the link is provided in e-news. They don't have to log in to Facebook Live at 6 o'clock. And I would echo the comment about a lot of older folks. Some of my older folks are more savvy with technology than some of our younger folks, and are not afraid to try it or use it. So that's been really exciting. So 5 work days, our folks have access or are getting communication, and then recording worship on Sundays. 6 days a week, they're hearing from us. And we are doing a mass mailing this week. So my mass mailing list is over 500 people. So we are including a self-addressed stamped envelope. And then we decided we'd do postcards after this letter, so they'll be getting something in the mail. And then the other thing I'm doing is just reaching out to some of my older folks, either by a phone call or with a note every week. So my list of direct contact is different because of folks that I would typically see during the week. Now I'm trying to reach out differently. But my goal is that they're hearing from me at least, or somebody on the staff, at least 6 days a week, whether they choose to read it or not. So it's just staying in front of it and letting people know.
In trying to make sure that we have some kind of personal contact at least once a week. For me personally, and it's not a big congregation, so it's relatively easy to do this. I try to portion out a certain amount of the membership list each day and just spend an hour or two just connecting and making sure that, you know, folks are receiving the calls and receiving the emails and all of that. But it's just a rotating list, and we have a couple of other folks in the congregation that stay in touch, especially with some of the more fragile elderly folks, and try to make sure that everything's going well. But it's just a rotating list.
I just wanted to make the comment that I think that this question of staying in touch with people is just essential, because the feelings of isolation, especially and I'm thinking about my own parents who are 88 and 89, that sense of isolation and loneliness is real. And I think it's going to be a major issue that comes from this time of physical distancing. So any of those personal contacts, I think more than maybe any other time, that congregational care is of the utmost importance right now.
Rachel, I'm going to read what you wrote since your microphone isn't connected. Our nurture team has divided up the directory so that everyone has households they're contacting every week via phone or email. Questions they're asking include, how are you holding up? What are the challenges you're experiencing? What would make it easier? We loop pastors in on pastoral care needs. When we identify practical care needs like food or medicine delivery, we're working on covering that. Things are complicated a bit by the fact that we're both under a shelter order, and we're largely an older congregation, active and in good health, but older and somewhat more medically vulnerable. Rachel, that is really great. I know Jen had shared a little bit about having her leaders kind of break up and make sure they're having contact. Are any of the rest of you having success deploying teams to help make sure that people are staying in touch? And what do those teams look like?
Okay. I've just assigned my council, my church council. Each of them have a few people they called them to tell them when, you know, that worship would not be meeting. And then I'm continuing to have them call and check in on them. We use Breeze as our, you know, church management. So it's easy to create, you know, a limited login, just call it council, and that way the council members can log in and find, you know, addresses and phone numbers and that kind of thing. Yep, that's it.
We have been using free conference call for prayer meetings every day, Monday through Friday. So during this time, it has been working to our advantage that because we were already online and praying, that we're checking on others and being able to use that time to pray for those that are having some issues, or also then doing that, we can find out more about what some of the others may or may not need. And so free conference call has been good for us, and we haven't had to pay anything.
So you have not had the 1 cent per minute charge?
No, when we started, so we've been doing this since last year. We started the end of July is when I signed us up. And so I have not received any cost or any kind.
And that may have just been my plan. Maybe that was just my carrier letting me know that's not part of my plan. I thought I had a pretty comprehensive plan, but maybe not.
I
Christy?
have a question for Linda. Do you know about how many people participate in that free conference call at one time? Or are there limitations for you?
I'm not sure if there are any limitations. They have never told us that there were any limitations. We've had anywhere from 15 to 20.
I did have Billy Fidlin posted an interesting piece about nursing homes, at least in the state of Arizona. I know 3 different states are represented on the call, California, Nevada, and Arizona. And all of us have different levels of protection and different orders in place. But I'm curious how, if any of you are, or how you are managing the folks that are in your nursing homes. So I think we've hit upon an area where we need to do some more growth and exploration, yes? Yeah, okay, very good. Have any of you heard anything from your nursing homes?
I have one parishioner who's in a nursing home right now. Unfortunately, his wife, I'm in contact with her constantly. Something we text a lot, actually. She's tech savvy, so that's great. One idea I had was to just make a little poster, just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, with a scripture or something, and say, your friends at Youngtown United Methodist Church love you, and just stick that in his window. He happens to be on a first floor, so that's one of the things I plan to do.
Janet, I loved your idea about the sign for the window, because that gets around the mail piece if in fact a nursing home is not allowing mail to be delivered per se. Children in Poverty right now is researching all of this and looking for ways that people could still be in ministry from their homes. And with your permission, I will pass that sign idea along, because that's a good one. Thank you. And it goes to what Nancy was saying about isolation and, those feelings of loneliness and all the rest of it. So thank you so much.
I'm also planning to get my family involved and do some sidewalk chalk too. I saw that's something they're doing. Some families are doing with their children in their own driveway, putting positive messages in front of their house. But no reason why we couldn't do that for somebody in our own community.
I love the, I've seen in a couple places now where they're taking like the blue painter's tape and essentially making like a stained glass look, and then doing it with chalk, and then you pull the tape off and you have a stained glass look. So that's another cool thing.
We've seen, we've got a family with young kids who've been doing it in their neighborhood. It came from Crayola, Chalk the Walk. And so we're actually asking our young families if they'll go do that for some of our older folks who may be a little more isolated. So they can get out as a family, but they're keep doing that social distancing that's so important. But I just love the term Chalk the Walk. Oh, also we're asking our families with young kids to write letters or draw pictures so that we can give them a list of people to mail things to. So they'll actually learn how to address an envelope and then mail something to, we've got some folks who are widowed, we have some folks that have been homebound, and so we're trying to keep them connected in different ways. And it gives families with children an opportunity to do something that's ministry related.
I think there's another population that is going to need pastoral care that we haven't discussed. And I think we're already starting to see people losing their jobs. And I think we're going to see people in our congregations who are losing their jobs. And so I think it'd be helpful to begin to think about what kinds of things and ways can we offer support to that population, which I think will be increasing over the next few weeks and months.
I know at Dove of the Desert, we actually have a fund that you can get a loan from. I mean, it's not really, it's a gift, but the hope is that you'll pay it back as you are able. And that's worked out pretty well over the years. Dove has had that for a really long time.
I don't know if you guys had heard on the news the idea from one Facebook that somebody posted on Facebook what they did in their community. They were new there, and so they had sent 10 letters to 10 neighbors saying, hey, we're a nice family, we're here, if you need help, we can go to the groceries for you or whatever. And posted it on Facebook asking people to do the same. And in his situation, it was both as a goodwill piece to help our neighbors, but also because he was new there and he didn't know any of his neighbors. So what if something happens to us? Who do we contact? So he wanted to build those relationships. That could be another good idea that we share with our congregants, with our community, to reach out to each other and, be the church in their community.
In a webinar I was in yesterday, one of the possibilities they suggested, and only if churches are up to it, is to put a sign in the church yard saying something like, "We are your church. If you need to contact us," and then they give the contact information. And that particular pastor was saying not every church may be wanting to have the challenges that might come from that, but that some churches do. And that might be a way to help the community to know, even if they don't attend the church, that the church is here for them.
For some of you who are in non-traditional settings, I wonder if you would be willing to share some of what you're doing to reach the people in your population, since congregational care looks totally different for you anyway.
Campus ministry, so it is very different for sure. I have been finding this interesting reality that I'm not sure if it's a response of a psychological response to what's going on or what, but that the students really, as I try to check in on them over traditional forms of communication like texting and phone, I'm really hearing from them like, I'm fine, I don't need anything. And so I really have to work to find out how they're really doing. And I don't know if that's a shock response or, as they're trying to figure everything out. And so I have found myself working a little extra hard. And so sometimes that means driving past their dorm in my car, and they can come to the entrance of their dorm and kind of talk to me. And we can maintain social distancing, or going for a walk from opposite sides of the sidewalk or something. So trying to, because I think, I think we should be sensitive to the fact that for a lot of people, being shut in and being isolated has already been a reality of their lives for a lot of our elders, et cetera. And so I think we need to honor and perhaps ask their wisdom as well about how they've been coping, while at the same time realizing that for our young people, being trapped in their dorm room is something new and shocking to the system. And so it takes me a little bit extra to get out of them how they're feeling. So yeah, trying to figure out safe ways to interact, organizing online chatter. And what I've also found is that I stumbled upon a way of recreating the church parking lot the other week, because we had our Wesley meeting and the students were they were wanting to hang out kind of longer than I had time for, because I needed to deliver some food to people and I needed to make sure people had eaten that night. And so I said, I'll just leave my computer on while I go out and you guys can keep talking. So they continued to take it to the church parking lot on the Zoom call after I had left the building. And so I heard later that, their conversations had gone, to a deeper place, that, sometimes that's what happens, right? When it's just a few of you after the meeting is over. And so, yeah, that was really a cool way of stumbling upon recreating a space that we have in life for deeper connection. Yeah, take your dog for a walk after your Zoom meeting and let people stay on the call and talk without you and talk about you and all that. So yeah, that's, I think also, the students' relationship with my dog is a really big thing. And so I feel okay with letting them play with her, even if we're social distancing. Maybe I should read up more if that's okay, but I feel okay right now with them playing with my dog. And so that's, yeah, I really, I understand that that's not, those kinds of things aren't possible for all of us. That's kind of what I've been trying to make work in my context. in addition to the fact that we have students that have gone home and so are spread out all over the country, and they actually seem to be the most isolated and the most eager for connection.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm also wondering, I know I've got a couple of really creative and impactful laity on the phone call. I'm wondering if, as you've gone through this, for you as a layperson, what has congregational care and nurturing looked like, or what has the role that you've been taking on felt like, or what do you wish you were hearing?
Hey everyone, this is Julie. I'd be glad to share. Like I said earlier, my church is Dayspring United Methodist Church in Tempe. I've received several phone calls from clergy staff at our church, just checking in. They obviously are doing the phone tree thing. But I also recently received a letter from the senior pastor with many of the things that you all have said, guidelines about canceling worship, whether or not small groups are canceled. They did have an interesting sentence about the physical church office, stating that the actual office is closed, but they're doing virtual hours, so connecting with clergy by phone or by email. At our church, we have a courtyard that has Lenten prayer stations. They have said that those are still open, but just to maintain safe distance. They also have a great one sheet about how to stay connected, and they list different things: the website, how to connect to the app, how to connect in multiple ways to the live stream worship services, and then obviously through social media, and then listing the contact information at our church of the staff person in case we have questions or difficulties connecting.
Yeah, please, Carla.
So in the district office, we get a lot of emails from all of you pastors. And a couple things that some of the churches that are doing that I think are really great. Grace United Methodist Church was looking to post, they're posting hours that are the senior hours at the grocery store for people. So, you know, there's more practical things I think that we can post, the churches can post that I think people will find helpful. You know, ways, you know, things that they're doing to help us connect, but also things that people who are isolated, you know, might be able to find, kind of like Christina's been sharing a whole lot of things in our chat on websites and stuff to go. And I think that sometimes our churches can send some practical stuff to us about working through this situation.
I know somebody who is in the preschool at Dayspring, and one of the preschool teachers has contacted the parents and volunteers to drive to the children's house so that they can do a drive-by wave to their students in their preschool. You know, not obviously coming in contact, but just so the kids can have some connection with that. And so I thought that was a different spin and really sweet for especially that age group, as we're talking in this webinar about how to reach younger kids.
So this is an odd question, but often I learn as much about what I should do from things that haven't worked. And I'm wondering if any of you have some practical wisdom around things that so far have not worked for you. I have learned that not everybody is on Facebook. So while that is a great way to connect to some people, I can't expect that Congregational Ministries information is reaching everybody through that platform. So that has been a good learning for me. And it's been a lot of fun finding out how to grow and be different. So what else hasn't worked for you guys?
You know, so many people have talked about how people are at different abilities in different places. And so I think just because something doesn't work for everybody doesn't mean that a lot of the things that we're trying aren't working for some people.
That's a great point, Carla. And Rachel shared something that I learned a year or so ago, which is that when you try to have a group of people do a unison prayer on Zoom, it often is quite a mess. So the best way to do unison prayers on Zoom is to make sure that everyone is muted during that time, so that you don't have 8 different voices coming through at different times. So great reminder, Rachel. And that's a really good reminder too, that there are a lot of things that are working in a lot of different ways. So it's just finding the right fit to plug in where. Any final pieces of wisdom for the good of the order? Any last things you all would like to share?
Just to, especially to other clergy, but to anyone who is kind of trying to coordinate some of our media outreach. One thing I have learned is do not ever hesitate to take advantage of people in your congregation who may be way farther ahead than you are with IT knowledge. Christina can testify to yesterday. I was trying to get a Zoom conference up and running into just little nonsense that we've overcome since then. But in the meantime, I had one of our members who was ready, willing, and able to get it set up, and we went that way, and it was all good. So, you know, as pastors, we always like to be the one in the driver's seat, but there are times when you can't. So
I can something that I've been thinking about, which it's not directly this time period, but I've in the past had a pretty large streaming social media kind of relationship with the church, and what I noticed was that that live matters to people. Being able to feel like you're really talking to them in that moment does matter to people. And I think that at times I would try to create, which is part of how I started to make films, was that I try to create really high quality content in order to get people to hear from other voices besides my own. And what I kind of saw was that the production value was less important to people than feeling like you were actually really talking to them. And so I think that that's, especially when people are feeling scared or isolated, I think what I've learned is that that to prioritize creating the sense for them that they are with you in that moment over your production value. And we all have different technical skills and capacity, equipment and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think that all of that is less important. Our differences in terms of production value and equipment, et cetera, that we have is less important than the challenge of really trying to figure out how to make people feel like you're really in the room with them and they're really hearing from you. And so I guess I would just say that as a word of encouragement to those who maybe have much less production value or equipment or experience, that conference call, if that's all you can do or something like that, that don't undervalue the importance of that, that the production value in I've had probably thousands of hours of experience with streaming, and I think the production value is less important than the sense of connection.
Well, friends, with that, it takes us right to our time. Please remember, we are offering community conversations just like this one. Please remember that you can find recordings of this and our previous community conversations and webinars online at dscumc.org/worship-online. Blessings, stay safe and well, and remember, you are the presence of God. Amen.